What I have for you here is what I am deeming the strongest Barbarian leveling build going into Season 8. This is called the Lunging Flamequake build. This is going to rely on a lot of mobility from Lunging Strike, some Whirlwind, as well as a bunch of Quakes and some really cool boss powers. How this is going to work, all of the planners that I have here are going to have a lot of written text for you, so you can always follow along with how these are going to be set up. It'll give you some caps, some things that you unlock as you level up. It'll also have a very comprehensive breakdown of your gameplay loop, as well as your defensive and offensive stats. This planner is going to be broken up into several sections. I wanted to make sure that the leveling process was nice and easy for anybody that was just hopping into the game to understand. We're going to have a level 1 through 25, we're going to have a level 26 through 40, and a level 41 through 60. There is an endgame variant for this, but we won't actually be tackling that. We're going to save that for another video. This is just going to focus on leveling. How this is going to work and why it's super beneficial to use these planners. The planners will be in the description of this video, so make sure that you click on the link. It's going to have a skill tree breakdown here. This is going to increase as you go up in levels. Once you hit the maximum level here, which is going to be level 60, you're going to have the most points spent. What's really cool about this is if you maximize this and then you hit your leveling path up at the top here, it shows you all of the skill points that have been put in the order that I put them in while I was leveling. It's going to be the best way to go about doing it, because if you just follow along with this tree and put in all of these points, you will miss out on unlocking some key skill points in the leveling process. You want to make sure that you follow along with this so that you can unlock everything, and then you go back and you put in all of your extra little modifiers that are going to make the game a lot smoother. So starting at the top here, we're going to be going into Lunging Strike, which is incredibly important for this build. Lunging Strike is a mobility build. Lunging Strike is a mobility skill, which we're going to get to later because that plays a huge role in how this build is set up. Combat Lunging Strike here, this allows you to gain berserking every single time that you crit. We don't critically hit very often in the very beginning of the game because we don't have a lot of stats. There are a couple ways that we're going to combat that, but the berserking bonus that we gain gives us additional damage, and it also gives us additional movement speed, which when the very beginning of the game is very needed because it is incredibly slow with no boots, no amulet, anything that doesn't give us movement speed. So it's going to be very welcomed. We're going to be taking Whirlwind, but we're only going to put just 1 point in here to unlock it. This will do a lot of damage, and then with the addition that they're adding into this node right here, this has the potential to be incredibly strong, especially in the early games. We're going to be taking Ground Stomp, and we're going to go all the way up through Tactical Ground Stomp. Even though this was nerfed from 900% down to 100%, it's still going to grant us vulnerable damage, and it's still going to do a significant amount of damage. We're also going to be taking Imposing Presence, and then we're going to be taking Martial Vigor. Imposing Presence gives us more life. Martial Vigor gives us damage reduction. Just being capped on resistances and armor is not enough to stay alive. You're going to actually need damage reduction, so that's why taking nodes like this is going to be super important whenever you're building a build. Rallying Cry is going to be our source of Unstoppable, which means that we cannot be crowd controlled at all. No stun, no freeze, no slow, none of that. Then we're also going to go all the way up through Tactical Rallying Cry. Now, depending on where you are with your Fortify generation, you can always swap down to Strategic Rallying Cry to generate more Fortify. We'll talk about that when we get to the aspects and why that's going to be super important. We're going to be taking Belligerence every single time that we use a basic skill, which is going to be Lunging Strike. We're going to do additional damage. Coming down here, we're going to be going into Warcry, all the way down through Power Warcry. This is going to give us more berserking. It's also going to give us additional damage and additional damage to Warcry if there's more than 6 enemies around. Booming Voice here is going to increase the duration of our shouts. Anybody affected by our shouts are going to deal less damage to us, so this is more damage reduction. Then we're going to just put 1 point here into Aggressive Resistance. This is a little bit of damage reduction, but we just wanted to unlock Prolific Fury. While we're berserking, we're going to generate more Fury. Now, if we end up going without using Whirlwind, which Whirlwind should be pretty strong, so we may not need to, but if you go without Whirlwind because Lunging Strike and your boss power is incredibly strong still, you can swap this out and then put the point somewhere else. You can actually even max out Aggressive Resistance if you want to, and then you can also go into some movement speed right here, which, like I said, is very important. We're going to be going 3 points into Pit Fighter here. This is going to give some damage reduction and some additional damage to close enemies. We're going to be taking Slaying Strikes. This is going to give us additional damage when monsters are above 80% life, which is healthy, or below 35% life, which is injured. We're also going to be taking No Mercy. This is starting to give us some critical strike chance. This is going to give us up to 9. 1 point into Thick Skin so we can unlock a counteroffensive. This is going to give us additional damage when our fortify amount is more than 50% of our maximum life. We're going to be taking heavy hitter because we're going into earthquakes. This is going to increase the damage of those earthquakes. Heavy-handed when we're using a two-handed weapon, which we're going to make sure that we set lunging strike to our two-handed mace. This is going to give us increased critical strike damage. And then we're going to get increased damage to any enemy that's going to be stunned or vulnerable. That's going to be using a mace only. So we need to make sure that we're using that two-handed mace to take advantage of all of these. We're going to max out Wrath of the Berserker all the way down through your Supreme Wrath of the Berserker. Now, here's the caveat. If you do end up running without using Whirlwind at all, you're going to go into Call of the Ancients. This will give us an additional bonus to attack speed, additional bonus to damage, and some more Fury generated because our Ancients are going to give us Fury back. If we are not spending any Fury through Whirlwind by using Wrath of Berserker will only give us damage bonus if we spend Fury. Then you're just going to want to pop it into Call of the Ancients. So there's a couple different options for you depending on your playstyle. We're going to be running Unconstrained. This is going to take your Berserking bonus from 25% up to 60%. And then anytime that we're below 65% life, we're always going to be Berserking. And then we will always have 30% damage reduction from physical damage. So that's how your skill tree is going to lay out. Now, remember, make sure that you follow along with this path. In this video, I just talked about going straight down, but you don't want to do that because if you're leveling, you're not going to be level 60 and you won't have all of your points unlocked. Now, if you end up short on points, it's either because you don't have the expansion pack or you haven't unlocked all your Renown. Renown gives you 2 points per region. There's 6 regions if you have the expansion pack. So make sure you go out there and get this done. Renown should be your first priority. It's also going to give you Paragon points and additional stats, so you want to make sure that you're getting that done. On your skill bar, you're going to be running Lunging Strike, Whirlwind, Wrath of the Berserker, Warcry, Ground Stomp, Rallying Cry, and then for your two-handed axe, that's going to be your expertise. You do not have to be using a two-handed axe to take advantage of this extra 10% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. It's going to be always there, so you always gain that. That's the point of having your class quest. Coming down into the aspects, we're going to be looking at this in 2 different ways. When we go into your level 1 to level 25, and then your 26 to level 40, all of the aspects that are going to be on this section will be able to be found in a dungeon. If you come all the way down to the very bottom of the guide, and you go down to your dungeon aspects, this is where all of those are going to be located. It's going to be a really, really great way in order to get these dungeons set up for you so that you can just go out, go straight to the most important ones or the ones that you think that you're going to need, and then you can get those aspects and then put them on and then get your character all set up to make the leveling process much easier. So here's a little hack. When you're in game and you bring up your Codex of Power, you're going to go into that. It's automatically going to select the class for you, so you don't have to do that. There's a nice little drop-down menu here. For me, because I'm in the current season, I have everything unlocked, so I'm going to uncheck my class, but I'm going to check the obtainable from a dungeon. This is going to only show me the aspects that I can get from the dungeons. I'm going to go down to the very bottom. Now, if you look right here on the screen, it's going to say pin on map. This is incredibly important because whatever controller or mouse and keyboard that you're on, you're going to click that button. Once we click it, and then we open up our map, it's actually going to show the pin on the map here. And now I know exactly where to go. I don't have to go mouse over the dungeons and see what they have there. I don't have to Google it. I can just pin the map and it's going to give me a line straight there. That's going to be how you're going to figure out which aspects you're going to need to go get from the dungeon if they haven't dropped yet for you. Now, you can go do those very early. You just may not have the materials in order to enchant. But if you go do them early and you do some dungeons, it's going to set you up later on to make your leveling experience a lot better. Now, before we hop into the aspects and talk about those, if you come into this leveling section right here, and then you go over to this, if you center click it on your mouse, if that's what you're looking on, it's going to actually take you to my website, Cliptis.com. This is going to be a complete leveling guide. Now, this is a breakdown of what to do, where to go, when to do things. At the very bottom right here, this is going to be the ultimate leveling video. So this will be a complete breakdown of this guide. There are a couple little things on the video that I talk about, but a lot of it, if you're watching this video, you're going to get to see. But make sure you check this video out as well before you hop into the season. So let's take a look at the aspects that are going to be in the very first variant, and then we'll talk about the final variant and things that you're going to need to look for that are going to drop instead of just being found from dungeons. The first 2 variants, like I said, are going to be the same. So we'll just look at this one right here. You're going to start with Relentless Berserker. Relentless Berserker is going to give you a chance to extend the duration of your berserking bonus, which is really great, especially early on, because we don't have as many sources of keeping up your berserking bonus. Then we're going to be running Aspect of Might. Every single time that you use Lunging Strike, it's going to grant you 20% damage reduction. You're expectant here. Whenever we use our Lunging Strike, it's going to slowly give us more and more stacks that are going to buff our next core skill. So our next core skill is going to be our Whirlwind. So we're going to be using this in order to buff Whirlwind. We're going to do a bunch of Lunging Strikes. We're going to make sure that we have our Might up because we're using Lunging Strike, and then we're going to use Whirlwind. That's going to be increased because of this. Numbing Wrath. Anytime that we generate Fury above our maximum, so if we have 100 and we use Lunging Strike, which generates Fury, it's going to give us Fortify for a specific amount. That Fortify is going to come into play later on because it's also going to grant us Barrier, and it's incredibly strong, and I'll talk about that when we get to the boss powers. For the boots, we're going to be running Ghost Walker. That's just going to give us additional movement speed and make us unhindered whenever we become unstoppable. We get unstoppable from using Rallying Cry and also from using Wrath of the Berserker. For the weapons, we're going to be running Edge Masters. The more Fury that we have when we cast a skill, the more damage it's going to do. Because we're going to be using Lunging Strike so often, we're going to get the maximum bonus when we have maximum Fury. So if you have 100 Fury and you have 100 Fury in your reserve, then we gain that maximum bonus. If you have 0 Fury and you cast something, we don't get anything from that at all. If we go down to Aspect of Dire Whirlwind, this is going to increase our critical strike chance the more that we channel Whirlwind. So if we get our Expectant up, we get a nice bit of Fury for Edge Masters, and then we cast Whirlwind. The more that we cast it, the more we crit. Inner Calm. Now, we are using a Whirlwind and a mobility build with Lunging Strikes, so we won't be standing still very often, but we still gain a passive multiplier from running Inner Calm. So this does give us additional damage, so it is incredibly important to have all those multipliers on. We're going to be running Aspect of Ancestral Echoes. This one right here is basically just for fun. It gives us a chance to spawn the Ancients based on a lucky hit chance from your Whirlwind. As they spawn, they do a whole bunch of damage because they will also be Whirlwinding too, which is a lot of fun. You get a whole bunch of Ancients that are going to be spawning and doing damage and Whirlwinding all over the place. For Aspect of the Umbral, this is going to restore primary resources whenever we crowd control an enemy. Then we're going to be running an Aspect of Rapid. This is going to give our Lunging Strike an additional attack speed the more that we use it. And finally, we're going to be running Aspect of Vocalized Empowerment. While our shouts are active, it's going to generate more Fury. So that is going to be your base aspects for this here. Now, as we go through every single one of these variants, you can go to the gear stats. The very first one has just a couple basic ones in. These are just stuff that you're going to look for. Don't bother enchanting yet. Once you start hitting the 26 to 40 range, you can start looking for things with a little bit more specific affixes on it, but you don't have to spend a lot of resources to get those. When you finally start getting into your 41 to 60, that's when we're going to have full aspect and full affixes on. So that's where you're going to start looking a little bit more, and then you can start enchanting, you can start tempering things in order to make it a really easy transition to get from that final mid stage to the end stages of your leveling process. Now, we talked about a couple different aspects that are going to be dropping only that we're going to be looking for. Now, this is going to be an Earthquake build, and there are actually quite a lot of aspects that are going to be dropping that we're going to be looking for in this final version. One of the aspects that we're going to be looking for is Bolkathos. We're going to be using this for damage reduction. Whenever we're standing inside of an earthquake and for 4 seconds after we walk outside of that earthquake, we're going to get some additional damage reduction. We're going to be running Anger Management. Whenever our Fury is above a maximum of 55 or anywhere down to 40, we're going to always be berserking. So we're also going to lose Fury per second. So that is why it's super important on some of these pieces here that we gain Fury per second as one of the affixes. You can put on your boots, you can put it on your chest piece, and you can put it on your helmet. So we're going to be looking for those as you're going along and you're going through. We're going to be replacing Numbing Wrath with the Steadfast Berserker aspect. This is going to give you Fortify whenever you deal direct damage while berserking. And we're going to be gaining additional ways to be berserking through Anger Management all the time. So now our direct damage is going to give us Fortify. And Fortify will get to the boss powers. You'll see exactly why we want it. The next thing that's going to be changing is we're going to be going Aspect of Incendiary Fissures. This is going to give our Earthquakes a straight multiplier. We're going to be running Fierce Winds. Now we're going to add a little bit of Dust Devils in, and we're going to add a little bit of Earthquakes as well. Fierce Winds, whenever you use a shout, you're going to spawn 3 Dust Devils, and then it's also going to make them a little bit bigger and make them a little bit stronger. We're going to run Aspect of Dust Devils. This right here got a little buff. Whenever we use Whirlwind, it's going to spawn a Dust Devil. Anything that's hit by those Dust Devils, or any of our Dust Devils, are going to take additional damage. Aspect of earthquakes. This right here is going to make it so that whenever we ground stomp, we're going to create earthquakes. Standing inside of the earthquakes, we're going to give us additional damage, and it also gives us straight damage multiplier to our earthquakes as well. And finally, we're going to be running Encroaching Wrath. The reason that we're running this here is because it's going to affect your brawling skills, and our ground stomp is going to be a brawling skill. So we're going to get a nice modifier here to our ground stomp. For the gems, we're going to put either diamonds or skulls into your rings and your amulet, depending on what your character needs. For the runes, you're always going to put the runes into the two-handed weapons for the barbarians, never put them in the armor, because strength going into the armor is a much bigger damage multiplier than any of the gems inside of the weapons. So this will put in the two one-handed weapons. We're going to put the emeralds in those two one-handed weapons, and then the two-handers are going to be saved for your runes. For the rune combination, we're going to be running Kerr, and then we're going to be running Ke. What this is going to do, every time that we cast 5 skills, it's going to give us 3 wolves. That'll be on cooldown for 3 seconds, but your wolves last for 8 seconds. So there will be overlap, and we'll have more than 3 wolves. The reason the wolves are so strong, they stun, they freeze, and they make enemies vulnerable. It's going to be a really great source of crowd control, and it's also going to be a really great source of vulnerable damage. Then finally, we're going to be running Mani, and we're going to be running Tech. This will allow us to spawn an Earthquake once every 2 casts of Lunging Strike. That's why Lunging Strike is so important to this build. It's going to be a really great way to get those Earthquakes out. Now, if you look right here, you actually can see that we can throw the Earthquakes. It's really, really cool. So this is going to be a great way to level. Let's say that you're trying to push something that's maybe a little bit higher than what you should be doing, but you really want to try it. You can throw those Earthquakes out to do some additional damage before the monsters get to you. Now let's talk about the boss powers. If we come here, this is going to be your main boss power, Sinrat's Flame. You can get all of these boss powers as soon as you have the incursions unlocked. You head over there, kill some bosses. Hopefully you get lucky and you find this one first. Every time that you use a mobility skill, it's going to shoot out some fire around you and burn your enemies. Even with the nerf, it's still going to be very strong. Blackmailer Sabotage. This is why we want to be generating Fortify. We're going to gain Barrier for a specific amount of all of the Fortify that we're gaining. If we have Barrier, Fortify up all at the same time, it's going to be a lot more defenses. It's going to make us a lot more tanky. We're going to be running Hatred's Embrace. Hatred's Embrace is going to give us critical strike chance based on our shadow resistance. And we're also going to be running Kirma's Spark. This is going to give us additional evade cooldown based on our lightning resistance. And finally, we're going to take a look at the mercenaries. For this build, I particularly like to run Subo. If you don't have enough Fortify generation and you're not seeing your Blackmailer Sabotage, you can always run right here as your main, and then you can put Variana as your opportunity. I made this one on the tankier side. If you're feeling okay, you can put Variana here, and then you can run your Bloodthirst to get a little bit more attack speed. Bastion absorbs 90% of the damage, and it has a 25-second cooldown, so this is always a great defensive option. But that's going to be our choices for the Mercenary. Super excited to get everybody into this build and hit the ground running on the server's launch. If you find this video helpful, make sure you share it with your friends. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I'm live every night. I'd love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the clip side.